Whitetail Advantage presents Mysteries in the Timber, unexplained encounters from the wild places. In the deep woods where shadows stretch and silence grows heavy, stories emerge of ghosts, cryptids, alien abductions, and hunters who vanish without a trace. Here the wilderness hides more than just game, it hides secrets. Join us as we step beyond the campfire light and into the unknown. This is Mysteries in the Timber.
What is going on, everybody? I'm John, host of Mysteries in the Timber. You might recognize my buddy over here from the Whitetail Advantage podcast, Brett Bovin. What's going on?
Yo. I don't know
All
why I said yo.
Because you are one.
Yeah.
All right. So welcome to the very first episode of Mysteries in the Timber, where we take different stories of disappearances and just mysteries of the unexplained, the paranormal, all from, the timber. So tonight, I wanted the very first episode to be something special, something close to home for Brett and I. So this is a case, let me back it up a little bit to February 1978, West Michigan, where we are, Brett. A college senior straps on cross-country skis and heads towards a frozen edge of Lake Michigan. Hours later, searchers follow his track to the beach until the prints just simply vanish at the waterline. They stop. There's no return trail, no body. This case is about the mysterious disappearance of Stephen Kubecki. So a little background track here. Stephen Kubecki was a student at Hope College in Holland, Michigan. So pretty close to Brett and I. He decided one day in February 19th, to go out and cross-country ski around Saugatuck, which is right on the coast of Lake Michigan. Tells his roommate, hey, I'm going out cross-country skiing. I'll be back. No one saw him since. So he went out cross-country skiing and never showed back up. So after about 3 days, his roommate noticed that he wasn't back. He was a college kid. Figured, he went out and met someone, had fun, whatever. Well, about 3 days later, when he still hadn't returned, his roommate called in the local police and said, filed a missing persons report. And I asked Brett to be on the show tonight because of his law enforcement background. So I don't know if you know, once someone files a missing persons report, Brett, what typically goes on?
I was only on a couple of them, so I'm only going off of my experience here. Generally, when someone files a missing persons, in my experience, it's all hands on. Let's go right to the scene of who called it in, and we'll start from there. And then we start kind of creating a SWAT team together. I'm like, all right, I want this person to come search there. I want this person to go search there. And we're just asking as much information from the person that called it in and gathering as much intel as possible from that person to start off with, and then going from there.
Absolutely. So you want to go out, you want to keep the area sterilized, check for tracks, check for anything like that. Nothing was found. Okay. So he went out cross-country skiing and just disappeared. You see his tracks leading up to the lake. Now, we know here in Michigan, Lake Michigan never freezes all the way over. There's, it will freeze from the shoreline out a couple hundred yards, but that ice is not like pond ice. It's really jagged. There's icebergs on it. It's hollow underneath from the waves crashing up. It's a really dangerous place. It was always taught to me growing up never to play on that ice because you never know what's solid. There's different crevices in there that you can fall through, break. Well, when law enforcement went out there to look for him, there was nothing. There's no tracks. There's no fresh, and it hadn't snowed. So we had a severe blizzard in February of 1978. So there's a lot of fresh snow. He went afterwards. So lots of fresh powder to cross-country ski. He was enjoying the scenery. We all know the Lake Shore is beautiful, especially in the winter. And the tracks just stopped. Even after 3 days, while he was disappeared, you still had you still see the tracks. Nothing. So law enforcement searched for a couple days, and they chalked it up to, oh, he must have fell through the ice. He went out onto the lake, fell through the ice. That was it.
So wait, and there was tracks leading to the lake, but then
There's-
once they got to the lake, there was nothing.
There's nothing. So the cross-country ski tracks went all the way to the lake shore, right to the edge, and then they just stopped.
Okay.
So law enforcement thought, okay, he must have went out onto the ice, took his skis off, walked out there, crashed, fell through, drowned, done. So they looked around a little bit more. Nothing. There's no skis. There's no person. There's no body. Nothing. So they go out there and they looked. They looked for 1 week, and you know as it goes. As a missing person, you search. Then at one point, you're gonna have to. You go from a search and rescue to recovery. The time has passed. That person is most likely deceased. Now it's recovery mode. Assets are backed off. Now it's only a few people. They never found a body. So Hope College ends up giving him an honorary diploma because they thought he had passed. His family had the whole funeral and everything, and that was it. Well, fast forward 15 months, okay? And one afternoon in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, he wakes up 700 miles from where he vanished, wearing clothing that he didn't recognize, beside a backpack with maps, a hitchhiking sign, and swears they're not his. He has no idea. So he wakes up in this field and has no idea where he's at. He is wearing clothes that he's never seen before. He has a backpack that he has no idea where he got it from. As he's going through it, he finds like a hitchhiking sign. He finds brochures and flyers for different races and events that he somehow participated in. And one of the things that he talks about is how he felt sore. Like he had just got done doing a lot of running. And he's in this field, he's confused, and as he's walking out, he's just walking. Well, he walks into the first building that he sees later on down, a couple miles down the road, and it's a restaurant. He looks over a man's shoulder who's reading the newspaper, and he sees that it's been 15 months from his last date. So he last knew that it was February 19th, 1978 when he disappeared. Now he's 15 months in the future and has no idea how he got there. So he calls the only number that he can remember, which was his aunt, who just happened to be in Massachusetts. So, of course, she answered, and she had she was just in shock that it's Stephen Kubecki calling, because they already had a funeral for him. They already grieved that he had passed. At this point, back here in Michigan, no one's searching for him because there's no body. That they just chalked it up to another victim of Lake Michigan. So he calls and says, "Hey, it's me. It's Stephen. I'm alive." Well, that's when the real mystery starts, because he has no idea where he's at. He realizes he's in Massachusetts now, but he has no memory from the time he disappeared to the time he reappeared, essentially. So he's wearing completely different clothing. And I remember the first time I heard this story of Stephen Kubecki disappearing, the first thing I thought of was Man, that's really crazy. That's some like Bermuda Triangle stuff, right? Like some guy walks in, or like all the airplanes that fly through the Bermuda Triangle that disappear and they reappear in somewhere else, or they just disappear and never show back up.
Reminds me of like the fourth kind type thing.
Exactly.
Like where the brother, I think it was, or the sister. I think it was the sister that just up and vanished, and they've never seen her ever again.
Yeah,
That's what that story reminds me of.
exactly. So I looked into it, and lo and behold, there's a Michigan Triangle. Have you ever heard of that?
Not till you told me.
Yeah. So the Michigan Triangle goes from southern Michigan in St. Joe area all the way up to Ludington, and then all the way over to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Now, for those of you that don't know where Saugatuck is, where he disappeared from, that is smack in the middle of the Lake Michigan Triangle. So the Lake Michigan Triangle is pretty unique. Per its size, there's been more plane disappearances and people disappearing in the Michigan Triangle than there has been the Bermuda Triangle.
Has there been, not to cut you off, but has there been any reports as of lately of like disappearances because of the Bermuda Triangle, the Michigan Triangle?
So there has. And there's also been a lot of UFO activity over the Michigan Triangle.
Huh.
So a couple years ago, there's this huge UFO report of a strange craft and lights off of Muskegon. So Muskegon is on the northern tip of the Michigan Triangle, and it was flying. This UFO was flying at altitudes that were well above typical airline traffic, and then it would be reported on radar, and then it would drop down to right above the lake at speeds that would just destroy conventional aircrafts. And it would go up and down almost like doing evasive maneuvers, essentially. It would go up to 30,000 to 60,000 feet, and then drop down to basically right above the lake. And then it would disappear from Muskegon and reappear in Holland in a matter of minutes, where no planes that we had at the time, or still to this day that we know of, could ever make it in that distance. And there was numerous reports of UFO sightings that night from Muskegon, Holland, all the way down to South Haven, and then going into St. Joe. So that whole triangle of the Michigan Triangle, within a matter of hours, there's UFO sightings along the entire Michigan side of the triangle, all the way to Green Bay over on the Wisconsin side. Now, it's really hard to get information from the center of the lake, but the exact times that the UFO sightings were reported in Michigan, there's still UFO reportings in Wisconsin at the same time. So it's a huge paranormal hotspot. Now, with this case of Stephen Kubecki, if you follow like the missing 411, who David Politis he was a retired detective. He was a SWAT instructor, and this guy held different positions in law enforcement for decades. I want to say he's like 25 or 30 years in. Well, he investigates missing people in national parks, and he has criteria that he meets for these missing 411. So a lot of it has to do with ley lines and terrain features. Okay, well, along these lines, people disappearing, I'll check them out. But the disappearance has to meet a certain criteria as well. And it has to be that person, were they suicidal, or did they want to just disappear? There's been a lot of different speculations on Stephen Kubecki's, as a person, did he want to disappear? Well, he was a mathematics student, So he studied mathematics and then fine arts as well. He had everything going for him. He was doing great student. Listening to other podcasts and reading more into it, he was kind of a loner, didn't have too many friends, but the ones that he had, he was pretty close with. And they all said no, like he would never just disappear, willingly. So then the investigators were like, okay, well, why would he disappear? What reasons could it be? So they're going down, was it family issues or anything like that? And we'll get into it later about like different theories. But so going back to the missing 411 and David Politis, was there a reason this guy wanted to disappear? No one can really see why he would want to disappear. All right, well, if he was found in an area that was previously searched? No, he was 700 miles away. No one ever thought of searching there. And then on top of that is, okay, well, was there any significant weather incidences during that time? Funny he should bring that up, because in February 1978, that was one of the biggest blizzards Michigan ever had.
I remember that. My parents told me about that.
Yeah. They were measuring snowfall on telephone poles. That's how much snow we got back then. That was clearly before our times. But that blizzard hit and shut down the entire state for the most part. And it was right after that blizzard is when he went missing, because that's the best time to go cross-country skiing. So that is one of one of the highlights on, okay, could this be a missing 411? There's been lots of theories. For me, I feel like this is that one guy. Well, let me backtrack here. I felt like this is one of those one guys who disappeared with the missing 411 and reappeared and survived. There's a lot of missing 411 who disappear. They search the area for 10 days, a month, and all of a sudden they find the body in a place that was previously searched by professional search and rescue teams. Now, I don't know about you, Brett, but have you ever had to work with like a search and rescue, or do you know how search and rescue works?
They start doing like a grid search, and they just kind of like, I've only been on one, but yeah, we start grid searching everything and kind of breaking down like points and kind of covering it, like, you know what I mean? Like we have an area map, like, all right, this person searched this grid here and here, and we just kind of move in a general direction. But we never got like search and rescue involved.
But there's always multiple searches or multiple eyes in one area.
Yes.
So what we would do is you'd have one team moving north to south, and you'd clear that grid. Well, once you're done there, you'd have another team moving east to west, clear the exact same area you just searched, but on a different angle. Because let's face it, it's pretty thick out here. You can walk right over something where another team might say, oh, look, we found this. We found an article of clothing, or, a blood trail, or whatever it may be. So with the missing 411, one of the criteria is an area that was searched that well, all of a sudden the body appears right there. And that's happened hundreds of times. Well, with Stephen Kubecki, he disappeared, and they did. They searched multiple areas over and over and over, and they found absolutely nothing. So they gave up. Now, when he reappeared, he was completely confused. He didn't know what time it was, what day it was, what year it was, until he walked into that diner and basically read it over a man's shoulder who's reading the newspaper. He sees it and it's like, oh, this is a lot longer time gap than I remember, right? And we've all had them nights where we may have drank too much, and you don't remember all of it, but I have never missed 15 months of my entire life and not know what
Right.
happened. So, he says he couldn't remember where he was and that he felt like he had been running for a long time. And once he got back to Michigan, that's when a lot of people were asking him questions. And at first he would talk about it a little bit. And then at one moment he just like stopped it. He stopped talking about everything and refused to talk about it anymore. And he kind of fell off the radar. But the mysteries and the questions never stopped. All of a sudden, locally for us, it became in that niche that I'm in with the paranormal and the disappearances. It became like a local legend. We want to know what happened. Well, for about he came back in 2019, or he came back in 1979. Up until 2025, there's been radio silence from him. He never talked about anything. And
Oh, he never got out publicly
no, he never.
about like this situation. More like it was kind of like he was discovered, like he made himself known, obviously, because he didn't know where he was at, and he started making that known. But then just kind of like died down right then and there.
Yeah, right off the bat, he talked about it for literally like a month, and then just refused to talk about it. And I can understand it. You go
Almost
through all of that.
embarrassing, maybe.
What's that?
I don't know if you consider it embarrassing, but more of just like I don't want to be like labeled into this type thing.
Exactly that. And I mean, he was 23 years old, which is still pretty young. Like you still have a long life ahead of you. You want to move on from this, right? I mean, you disappeared, you reappeared, you pat yourself over, you're like, oh, I'm all here. Yeah, that was pretty messed up. I just want to go on with my life. So he gets back, he goes back to school, he gets a mathematics degree, he then goes back and gets a doctorate's degree, and then you just kind of don't hear anything. Today he is, I believe, is actually a psychiatrist in the Pacific Northwest. That's where he's at right now. So, on October, let's say the 28th, 2025, he's living in the Pacific Northwest. He's living out a career. Well, the story jumped back into mainstream media, especially with today's internet and podcasts being what they are. I mean, we're covering it here today. People started reaching out to him, right? And he refuses to answer any questions about it. Well, then he decides, hey, if you have any questions about this, I wrote a book about it. And so that gives everyone in, my community of tinfoil hat wearing guys, we're like, well, I want to read this. I want to know exactly what happened. So you can go on to Amazon, and his whole pitch was, go ahead and buy my book. It's on Amazon. And if you want to know what happens, you have to read it. Well, the thing is when you go to do that, you can pre-order, but he has not had a publisher say, we're going to publish your book.
So he's doing this all on his own?
He's doing it all on his own. But the thing is when you go to buy that book to figure out what happened to him, it's not out yet. So that gets you thinking like, okay, well, it's been this long of a time gap from the last time it was relevant to now he's saying, oh, buy a book if you want to know what happened. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what's the deal? Why is he doing this? So what I really wanted to do, now this is just warm and fuzzy of Stephen Kubecki's case, right? We can go into more detail of what happened, what led up to it, and we're going to go over some theories on what could have happened. But after listening to different podcasts about it, they have kind of like a collective understanding of what could have happened, or what they thought could have happened. So one of them is misadventure, survival, and memory gap. Could Stephen have left the ice, gotten turned around, and suffered exposure, and then through a chain of rescue, rides, and shelter, drifted east, eventually coming to in Massachusetts? Severe hypothermia can cause confusion, but we still have to account in the cross-country relocation and the curated items reported in his backpack. You know, the map, the hitchhiking signs. He had money, he had glasses. And I mean, that's just kind of odd that he would have all of that stuff, right? Now, I'll go over all of these possibilities, and I want to know what you think it could have been. So you have that one, right? Just misadventure. He went out in the ice. He was like, you know what? I'm confused. I'm hypothermic. I'm going to look for someone to give me a ride. And 15 months later, 700 miles, he ends up in Massachusetts and just comes to. Well, there's also something called dissociative fatigue, which is like a psychiatric fatigue, right? Basically, it's often stress related. It can produce sudden travel, loss of autobiographical memory. So you lose that, you just draw a blank on who you are, and the adoption of a new identity. So you'd be, you know, for us, from our other podcast, that would be like us walking into the woods, climbing up in our tree stand and saying, who am I? What am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing. Get down, and then 15 months later, we'd come to, and it's like, oh, I'm John. I'm in a field in Massachusetts. Doesn't quite make sense. Although it does explain the Massachusetts field and disappearance, and even the report that he used another name when picked up. So I didn't mention this. When he got picked up, when he was walking in Massachusetts, I said he walked into a restaurant. He did, but he hitchhiked to that restaurant that he got into. And it's unclear. It's different stories say different names that one story said he used Stephen Kubecki. Another one says he used a different name, like an alias, which does fall into this dissociative fatigue. But typically when that happens, it's not for 15 months. It's for a matter of possible hours. Like any accounts for that, it's typically a matter of hours. You're confused. You don't remember who you are. Through different people talking to you, you usually have an ID on you. Through psychiatric help, you remember who you are. Oh yeah. You know, you're just confused. Well, another theory is voluntary disappearance. So when I heard this theory that he just voluntarily disappeared, I looked a little bit more into it. I'm like, well, why would he disappear? Now do you know anything about Hope College?
No, like a background.
Yeah. So Hope College is a huge Christian school.
Yeah, that's the base that I know of it.
Yep. So there's a theory out there that, you know, he's a sophomore in college. He was a senior in college. He's just getting ready to graduate. He's 23 years old. There's a theory out there that he was dating this woman, got her pregnant. They weren't married. And in order to basically get out of it, he faked this entire thing. So, I mean, we've all... Oh, go ahead.
But then if you're going to fake it, why would you come back to it 15 months later?
Exactly. That was one of the big questions. So if you're going to fake a disappearance like that, I'm going to pop smoke, disappear, and not reappear. Like that's so there's theories that he disappeared until that woman that he allegedly got pregnant, had a child, and then moved on with their life, and then he reappeared. That was I could see that happening a little bit, especially coming from such a Christian school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you get a woman pregnant and you skip town. Let's face it, that happens. Some dudes just will do that. But at the same point, you don't come up with this elaborate backstory of, oh, I'm going to go cross country skiing. I'm going to somehow go all the way to the lake with my skis, get to the lake's edge, and then I'm going to slowly backtrack out. I don't know. Like, how would you?
But how would you just make your footprints just up and disappear? Like they're just like, how would you do? Just elevate from or teleport from South Haven basically all the way to Massachusetts?
Yeah. And this theory, once I heard it, I was like, there's no way. Like, he would never do this. Well, I mean, I can't say he would never do this. I find it super unlikely that this would happen. I feel like he would, I mean, just the logistics of it alone, you'd have to go out to the lake. Okay, say you have a buddy that has a boat, right?
Yeah.
You'd have to walk all the way out on that crazy ice to get out there. There would be footprints.
Mm-hmm.
So this has kind of been like the theory that he just voluntarily disappeared. So like a lot of those non-tinfoil hat wearing guys, unlike me, go, oh, he just basically abandoned all responsibilities and disappeared. But then when you start, how, let me back it up here. Brett, how would you disappear? Like let's go all the way up to the lake. Now you're at the lake, right? You have your cross country skiing tracks all the way to the lake's edge. How would you disappear?
I mean, you can't really necessarily walk back in your own tracks because they'll be able to tell, like, oh, you could see how there's kind of like tracks going this way, and then they kind of, even if you were kind of like walking backwards, they would, if you had a skilled search and rescue person, they'd be able to tell that.
You'd be able to tell, because for those of you who have never cross country skied, you're basically, your toes are in the ski and your heel comes up and that's what pushes you, right? And even on the skis, you're sliding across. And say you turned a little bit, if he got to that edge, stepped out of his skis, turned them around, and put them back in the tracks, you'd have boot prints showing that he did that. Or another option is he cross country skis to the edge, jumps up, spins, does a perfect 180, lands back in his tracks, which you would be able to see because it would, as he jumped and spun, it would sink down a lot further than if he was just standing there. But there's absolutely none of that. His tracks went to the edge, it went in one direction and then stopped.
If I was gonna disappear, I would just say I'm going some. Am I put in his situation or just like randomly if I trying to disappear on my own?
You know what? Let's play it out where
I'm
you
stuck in
have
his situation?
Yeah, we'll do that.
I'll give you both. I'm
All
stuck in
right.
his position. If I'm taking tracks out there, I would wait till I know like there's a huge snowstorm coming, maybe. That way it covers up my tracks.
Yep.
And
Which,
then
if you look back at the case, there was a giant blizzard just beforehand.
yeah, so he probably mapped that out and then just beeline it somewhere in a completely different direction and then just kind of get pavement to where my tracks can't be found and then go from there. But if I want to do my personally, like because we're here in Michigan, I just say I'm going somewhere and drive all the way up to like the UP or somewhere isolated where there's like no people at all and
Exactly.
vanish that way. That's how I would do it. Like let's say if I was in college and I find out, and if that theory is correct of where I got a girl pregnant in college and I didn't want the responsibilities, I would just say, all right, I'm going for a drive. And then I go bushwhack it up in the UP somewhere and just live out my days there.
Oh
But
yeah.
you come, it's just shocking because that one is to me, because if you're trying to get out of it, why, like I said earlier, why would you come back to it 15 months later?
Yeah. And disappearing to the UP, that was my first thought too.
Mm,
Where, okay, if I'm in his shoes and I got, I've done this thing where I got a woman pregnant on a super Christian themed school. It's going to look bad on my family. I'm going to disappear. Like you said, go up to the UP, disappear. There's so many ways to go about doing it, especially back then where we don't have so many, back then they didn't have a bunch of cameras everywhere. No one had cell phones. You could, in my mind and in my opinion, you could disappear pretty easily,
yeah.
especially once you did it across that Mackinac Bridge. You get into that UP, and there's not a very large population up there, minus a couple towns. I mean, you have
Yeah.
Escanaba, Marquette, and that's really about it. Once you get in there, you can just blend into anywhere. I mean, yes, the Upper Peninsula is a part of Michigan, but we're so far dislocated that, I mean, it's like a whole nother state up there. So he could have easily just went up there, disappeared, created a new life, and yeah, just lived out the rest of his life up there. But no, he reappeared 15 months later in that field. And a lot of people think that he fabricated the whole thing where with like the bat patch because he wanted just to confuse people. Like, oh, I got this bat patch. I'm going to throw this stuff in here just to make it seem like, you know, I've been off. I don't know what I'm doing. And I hear that and I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think he would do this.
Oh,
And this story goes back to, have you ever seen that movie Fire in the Sky?
no.
So Fire in the Sky is a movie based on a true story of Travis Walton. Okay. Um, I'm going to look it up here real fast because I don't have all the information right here. Okay. So Travis Walton is a man who disappeared in, I want to say it was, November 1975. So he was in Snowflake, Arizona. He was on a logging team. So they're out logging one night, and it was him and his crew. It was him, his brother, his best friend, another guy that they just brought onto the team who wasn't like no one really knew him. He was a convicted felon. He was that one oddball guy out, right? We all have that friend. We have that friend on our podcast. We won't say who it is, but it's that one guy that's that oddball guy that's left out. But what they were doing, they finished up their day's work. They're driving back down the mountain, and they see, in all their words, they see a giant spaceship just floating there. They all get freaked out. They want to go. They want to go. They're stopped in their pickup truck. And Travis Walton was like, no, he opens up the door, gets out, and he's walking up to it. So he's walking up to this ship, and it's this giant, like watching documentaries about it and watching Fire in the Sky. It's this unbelievable spaceship, and he's walking up to it. And all of a sudden, Travis gets hit with this giant beam of light. And he starts bending, like he arches his back, his light hits him, and he starts elevating up. Well, everyone in the truck that, they're seeing this, they're freaking out. And just this giant bright flash happens. And they're like, we gotta get the hell out of here. So the driver speeds off in his truck. They're going down this mountain like crazy. They're hitting back roads. And Travis's brother's like, no, we have to go back for him. We have to go back for him. He's still there. We saw him. After, a little bit, I don't know how far, a couple miles, not even, maybe. They decide, okay, we have to turn back around and go find him. So they spin around, go back to that sighting where they spotted the spacecraft or this giant UFO, and there's nothing there. There's burnt trees, the ground's all singed. No Travis, no signs of anything. So, this is 1975. There's no cell phones. So they beeline it down into town, and they call the police. Now, these dudes are loggers. They've all, one guy has a criminal background. They're like, oh, these guys are just, whatever. They're pulling our leg, basically. So these guys call the cops, and they try to explain what happened. But you have to understand, like, you're calling, like, Brett, you're law enforcement, right? You get this frantic phone call saying, hey, a UFO or a spaceship or something huge like that just shot out a beam of light to my friend. What's your first thoughts?
All right, who's playing the joke?
Yeah, exactly. Right? Like, oh man, these dudes are drunk or high or something. Like, all right,
Yeah.
all right, cool. We'll send Mulder and Scully from the X-Files to come talk to you, right?
Yeah.
But no, these guys go up there and they start searching, and they don't find them. Like they don't find them. They see all this evidence of burnt trees, and they create this giant search and rescue, basically, again, searching for Travis Walton. Well, they never find him. So these guys from the truck, Travis's logging crew, they all have the same story. The spaceship came down, shot a beam of light at Travis. A giant flash of light happened. We got the hell out of there. Dude, I can't blame them, man. I mean, if we were all out together and a giant beam of light came down and hit you, dude, I'm getting the hell out of there. Like,
I would tell you,
sorry,
get the fuck out of here. This,
a mile or so down the road, I might be like, oh man, that's kind of a dirty move. I might have to go back up there and check out Brett, check on Brett. And that's what they do. They get law enforcement involved. They go up there, they search for him, and there's nothing. So I'm actually looking at this here real quick. I'm actually on Travis Walton's Wikipedia. So it was 6 members of his crew. They, reported him missing. They're gone. Well, I'm trying to get the exact days here. They searched for him for 3 days, and there's nothing. Well, I want to say it was it was November 12th. So he disappeared November 5th. It's now November 12th. And Travis reappears. He calls his girlfriend. He calls his sister. I'm reading his Wikipedia right here. It was shortly after midnight. Travis placed a collect call to his sister's home from a payphone in Herbert, Arizona. And basically says, I need help. I don't know where I'm at. And he has no memory from the time he got out. I got out of the truck and walked up to the craft to now I'm in Herbert, Arizona, a long distance away. And I don't know how I got here. So they, originally they thought the whole logging crew, they thought it was a scheme to kill Travis, hide his body, make up this giant elaborate story. So during the whole time that he's missing, they're going through polygraph tests or lie detector tests, and they're all passing it. Now, I've heard that a polygraph test is not admissible in the court. Is that true?
That's true. Yes, it's not admissible.
Okay.
And if people don't know, that means it's not allowed to be used as evidence in court.
Yeah, it's just another. It's basically just it's a stress test, basically.
It's a tool to use in investigations, basically, to see like how people are reacting to certain questions and stuff like that. They want to see how people are kind of reacting to see basically is what it is.
Okay. So they're asking these other 5 guys on his crew, and they're saying, hey, what happened? They're asking him all these questions. Do you have anything to do with the disappearance? Blah, blah, blah. They all pass except for one. The guy who didn't pass was also the guy that they didn't know the most, and the guy with the criminal background. Understandable. This dude is a shady guy. It's a logging team, right? A logging crew. Think of like an oil rigger, right? Those are typically like roughnecks or guys that have, been in and out of jail who just need a job. So, yeah, he's probably in a stressful situation. But, a few days later, Travis reappears, has no memory. And it's not until later on in life, through regressive therapy and all sorts of different help, that Travis starts piecing together stuff. Okay. He remembers being taken aboard a ship, and he remembers all sorts of crazy stuff happening. And we'll get into that on a later episode. But to me, so many instances of Stephen Kubecki and Travis Walton's stories made sense. Okay. So they both disappeared just like that. There's there's a trail going into the Lake Michigan, which in the heart of the Lake Michigan Triangle, there's, historical evidence of UFO activity there and disappearances. And where he disappeared at is right smack in the center of the triangle. Travis Walton, same incident or same scenario. He's out in a very high strangeness area, lots of UFO activity out there. He disappears without a trace, just boom, vanishes. Just like Stephen Kubecki. Just, you're there one moment, gone the next. The only difference is between Travis Walton's story and Stephen Kubecki's is Travis Walton's had witnesses, had 5 other guys witness. He stepped out of the truck, walked up to a craft, beam of light hit him, boom, gone. Where Stephen, there's no one around. We don't know what happened. We can't even use his words because he doesn't know. He has no idea. Now, this is where it starts getting a little interesting, right? So, I look into my script here. But, so, Stephen Kubecki later on wrote a book, okay? And I gotta find it here. But he basically writes this book. You know what? I'm not going with the script. I've read it enough. So Stephen Kubecki writes this book, and he never goes into detail. He's super vague about it. And he always says, if you want to know, you got to buy the book. Well, he can't buy the book because it's self-published and he hasn't done it yet. And he, on one episode one story I was reading about he's talking about, well, I know what happened to me. And it involves time travel. It involves the paranormal. It involves aliens. He just covers the whole spectrum of crazy shit that's going to happen. Like, he's just throwing it all out there. This is all that has happened. The story includes all of this, but he won't go into detail about it. And then I get to thinking, like, my tinfoil hat wearing mind. I'm like, okay, either one or two options is true. either his story is completely true, which is mind-blowing in itself, or it's complete bullshit and he disappeared on his own, which is complete mind-blowing as well, because how did he do it? How did he pull off the greatest disappearance ever just to reappear 15 months later to fake this whole thing to sell a book that was written in 2025?
And then it seems like, why would you do it and then try to cover it up?
Exactly.
It's like, oh, it's like you woke up one day, you know what? I'm gonna go disappear, reappear 15 months later, forget who the fuck I was, and randomly show up on the East Coast, forever ways away. And then I'm going to say this happened for like a month and then not talk about it for years and then say this happened, but I'm not going to say anything about it.
Yeah. Not
Like,
only that,
like if this was a game plan, like what kind of person comes up with that kind of game plan?
I mean, that's a long game. Like, he's in it
Yeah.
for the long haul. But then part
Real
of me,
quick question. Did
yeah,
we ever find out if there was a girl that he got impregnated?
no, we don't know.
That's just a theory.
So that's what I was looking at too. Yeah, that's just a theory
Oh, okay.
because there's no proof. And what I was thinking is, I'm like, oh, well, there's got to be a way to prove that, right?
Yeah.
And what's the pros and cons of companies like 23andMe or Ancestry DNA? You could easily trace it back to that. Once somebody puts their DNA in that system, that's what it's there for, right? So being law enforcement, if you're looking for a suspect or the next of kin, you can use a database like that to say, hey, we're looking for the next of kin of this person's DNA, right? You have that giant database, which is, I mean, that I'll put my tinfoil hat on that whole thing, that whole DNA, DNA database. That's just crazy for me, and I'll never be on that. But there's a paper trail that can go all the way back to say, hey, yeah, you are related to Stephen Kubecki. It shows that you are, his direct descendant. There's never been anything like that. Which
Yeah, but
seems
who
like
would know? Like, if you're the child, you wouldn't have no any idea of like who your father is, obviously. And if this was true, how come the mom or the girlfriend hasn't come out and said anything?
exactly.
Like
There's no,
anything.
there's been theories where, oh, well, this person feels, that woman might feel shame that she got pregnant from a one night stand or whatever it is, right? But in today's day and age with social media and the ancestry DNA and all of that, if that person would say he had a kid, that kid got, say, hey, I'm going to do this ancestry DNA and see what my background is. See if I'm Native American or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
Does that, it would come up with, here's your ancestral tree. Then it would have, if Stephen Kubecki ever did it or anyone in his family ever did it, it would have their lineage to it. That's never been done. It's never been proven. So then I decided, my tinfoil hat wearing guy, I'm going to go down this rabbit hole of what, he writes this book, right? Or he writes this book in air quotes because it's not published yet. There's either two options in my mind. Either it's all made up. He has a cover. He said he wrote this book that he has no intention of ever publishing, just to get sales on pre-orders, maybe. I don't know. Which it could be, people have done
Yeah.
Ponzi schemes and all sorts of other stuff to get rich quick.
The huck to a girl.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah, spit on that thing. Or he did write the book and there's someone out there or some organization that is keeping it from being published because maybe
Okay.
it is true. Maybe everything he's writing is true, that he was abducted and that it was, he spent those 15 months, I don't want to say traveling the universe, but he spent those 15 months abducted. And then they just I say the entities that abducted him
hmm
just returned him to a general region, right? Like they're not, I say they're not going to pit someone up in Michigan on the Triangle and then just spit them out in Massachusetts in a field.
Right.
But that would just be like us. How many times have we had an ant crawling on us and we're like, ew, flicked it off? And in a matter of a moment, that ant is now in a new place that he's never been because we flicked him off our arm and he has to try to make it back to his colony.
Yeah. What if it was like the government trying to because I relate back to the Fourth Kind because that movie stuck out to me so much, and I just remember when I watched that when it came out, I was in high school getting ready to graduate, going into college. I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to get into that as like a profession and type thing and whatnot. And I really got down that trail. I was like, it seemed like the government was trying to cover that up, and the only reason that made it to the light was because I can't remember her name, but she came out and told her story because even law enforcement, even her own son, don't believe what happened there, even though there was dash cam, and you can say in video, like the movie, like, oh, that's edited to make it work and stuff. But I believe that story, like they put real clips of it into the actual movie, and it seems like even the government was trying to cover things up about it all. I mean, you hear it all the time, like they're trying to cover up Area 51 and UFOs and sightings and stuff like that. And you have these whistleblowers that come out and they'll say, no, they're real. We just don't want to air it out to the public.
Oh, absolutely. So for people listening to this and saying, oh, how can the government hide something like that? Why would they want to? Well, a great example of this is the Tuskegee incident or the Tuskegee report or experiment. I'm sorry, that's what it is. The Tuskegee experiment. What they did is the government, this is our United States government, what they did is they took a large, I want to say it was in Louisiana or Mississippi. I want to say it was Mississippi. They took a large population of African American males and they infected them, or they gave them a shot, right? They gave them a shot and said, we are going to take care of all of your medical expenses, all of your hospital visits. You just have to come back and see us. Don't go anywhere else. Come back to see us. We'll cover everything. And all of these guys were like, oh, absolutely. They're making, I want to say it was like $50 a month. This is back in, I can't remember the year, but this is another something that will go down later on. But they're getting like $50 a month. We're going to give you a shot once a month. Come back and see us. And they were doing that. And all of a sudden, all these guys started getting sick later on down the road. And the government's like, okay, no problem. Don't go see anyone else. Come right to us. So that way the government had complete control over the situation. Well, what they had done is they had infected these guys with syphilis. And they wanted to see what the long-term results of syphilis would be to people who didn't know they had it. So this whole process went on for years, like decades. I mean, it went on forever. And everyone who had it had died, minus, I think there's like 3 or 4 people who decades down the road were still going back to these doctors, and they were getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and they're the last survivors of it. Well, one of the guys was like, you know what? I'm going to go see a doctor out of the government, out of these, I have to go back and see this one doctor. I'm not feeling good about it. I'm going to go ahead and see this other doctor. So he goes to this doctor. They test him, and he tests positive for syphilis, and it has been for years. And the government covered it all up. I mean, they were covering it up the entire process because they had control over everything. They inoculated these guys with syphilis, and then they just wanted to see what would happen. I mean, people were going blind, people were dying. There's horrible things. And there's this giant lawsuit against the government. And then the government was like, okay, we're just going to, sweep this under the rug. We'll give this guy X amount of dollars and we'll just play it off. Well, throughout the Freedom of Information Act and everything else, that experiment was released and said the government had to come out and say, yeah, we did this. It wasn't our finest moment, but we did it. And that's just one of many examples. So there's that. There's like the MK Ultra. Do you know anything about that?
No.
Where they basically were giving LSD to different people and trying to control their minds and seeing
I
how
remember something about that. Yes. I didn't know that was called, but I remember back in like the 50s they were doing that, right?
Yep. So they were giving people LSD, like ridiculously high doses of LSD.
Yeah.
Try to like basically create sleeper agents and see what it would do, the effects on people. Like our government has done some of the shadiest things ever. And I'm sure we'll dig into it later on in this on these podcasts as they go.
They do that for the war movies.
Oh, absolutely.
What's her name? Candace Owens. She's come out and she said, yeah, if you looked at like 98% of the war movies or like those type of related movies, they have to go through the government because they need to know, like, all right, you can release these parts of like kind of like the story, and we want to see how much you're going to involve us and stuff like that. Like they get like into the actual movies themselves, so they're in Hollywood.
Oh, for sure. And another, like, I just listened to a podcast earlier, and it was about how the CIA has influenced the music industry.
Yeah.
And I mean, to think that our government wouldn't cover something up like this, and especially with Stephen Kubecki's case where he disappeared for 15 months, he doesn't want to talk about it, which I understand. If he was abducted, which I personally believe that he was, and over time, through regressive therapy and everything like that, he discovered what happened. And he's like, I'm going to write a book. It's, blowing up the government saying, hey, this shit that all these tinfoil hat wearing guys had been talking about for the past decades is true. I'm going to expose the entire government. The government would have no problem shutting that down. Like,
yeah. That's why I'm thinking they're covering up his book.
Exactly. So that's my really far out there, but I think very reasonable reason on what happened to him. And yeah, the government's covering it all up.
I agree with you on that one. Yeah. And I believe that he just randomly got abducted and just miraculously just show up in Massachusetts.
Yeah. I mean, to think that, I think of it, I like to think of it as my ant theory, right? Like you have the ant on you, you flick it off. All of a sudden that ant's somewhere that it's never been, and he has to find his way home. Well, at that point, Stephen Kubecki was that ant, and whatever picked him up, whether it be a UFO, aliens, whatever, it returned him in the wrong spot. Because I brought up Travis Walton. There's a scene in that movie where he's in that alien craft and he floats out of this pod that he's in. He escapes out of it. Like he's in almost like a cocoon, and he breaks out of it and he's flying through like zero gravity, floats over into another pod, breaks through that. There's like a membrane on it that keeps him in there. He breaks through that, and there's another person with a backpack on, and like it's a whole nother person. Like how many people disappear each year in the United States that we just never hear from again? I mean, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
The amount of people that disappear, and to think that 100% of them are just, someone kidnapped them and they're gone. Or, they just plain disappeared. I mean, if that's the case, that's even scarier, I think, than possible UFO abductions, because that just means that someone locally is kidnapping people, making them disappear, and we can't find them.
That reminds me of like the story. It was a 12-year-old kid, and I want to say it was in Arizona, New Mexico, or somewhere in that area. He was hiking with his dad, I think it was. And don't quote me on this. I heard the story last year. And they were next to like this giant mountain. And it was about like 400 feet up in the air. But they were camping, and his son was just like randomly disappeared. But then they found his like shoes perfectly on the edge of the edge of the mountain, like the shelf of it.
Yep.
It just placed there perfectly. And that was it. And I don't think they found the kid. I don't know.
So that was actually out in the Superstition Mountains out in Arizona. And there's so many reports of like different paranormal events going on out there, and portals where people will almost like walk through a portal. And have you ever seen Stranger Things, that TV show?
No.
So they have what's called the Upside Down, which is our world but mirrored, like our world, just a different reality, basically. And they feel like when these people, especially in the superstitions, they'll walk through a portal, and all of a sudden we'll be in a world like that where everything looks the same, but the people you were with, they're not there. They just, it feels different. And sometimes you'll have reports of people going through one of those portals and coming back and be like, that was completely weird and I can't explain it.
Yeah.
And then other times you have people who will completely disappear, and they'll find, like you said, their shoes. And the shoes, their articles of clothing or whatever will be in a spot that they shouldn't be. It's almost physically impossible for them to be there.
Yeah, I think something was with his coat or something. It was like somewhere up in a tree, maybe.
Yep.
Or something else outside of the shoes. Something else was odd about the story too. Like, how did the kid's like coat get the boots there, and then the coat was like 100 yards or something like that away, perfectly placed in like the tree, X amount of feet up in it, or something like that. There's something else outside of the boots that made it stick out to me too.
Yeah, and it's crazy, and that's the type of stuff that we're going to be digging into in Mysteries in the Timber for sure.
God, this was an awesome first show. I mean, when I listen to you talk, most of the time I just want to like, and ask you questions, but I'm just like in awe. I'm like, oh,
dude, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to have you on here, because you have that law enforcement background where you can interdict, or you can put in your opinion as law enforcement and be like, hey, listen, as like search and rescue, right? How do you do it? How does your typical law enforcement perform a search and rescue? You have that insight.
And as a law enforcement officer, you're going off of like pure evidence. Like, you can't believe in like that superstition or anything. Like, you have to go, well, this is evidence that's right in front of me. I can't deviate from it, basically.
It's all black and white for you guys.
It's all black and white. There's all of us like cops, we want to live in that gray area because there's a lot of gray area there, but we gotta go off what's black and white. And Yeah,
It's
I have insights to the
yeah, and that's the thing, with our other show, Whitetail Advantage, we're avid hunters. We go out there, we hunt the woods. We do that daily, and then we come home at night. And with Mysteries of the Timber, we got to remember that there's stories of people who go out hunting who have that passion that we do. Go out there, they live that lifestyle, but not all of them return. And we want to make sure that we don't take it for granted, that we know that there's unexplained things out there and that we're going to cover it. We're going to keep those stories in the back of your head. So when you're out there in your tree stand or your saddle and you're waiting for them deer to come by, just like you with the fourth kind, man, maybe one of these episodes will stick in your mind and be like, you know what? Yeah, it is a little eerie out here right now. It went from all of a sudden the birds were chirping, the insects are buzzing, and now there's dead silence.
and
Well,
the hairs on the back of your neck stick up.
exactly. And that's they always say that we have that instinct where, oh, the hairs on the back of my neck are standing up. Why is that? That's that primitive instinct in us that something's not right. And sometimes those guys have those hairs on the back of their neck stand up and we never hear from them again. So we're going to be digging into them stories here tonight and in future nights, brother.
Oh man, this is the coolest shit.
And on a completely unrelated note, the next episode that we have, this will not be a blank white wall. I promise you on that.
Let me see here. Your next show. Make sure I put this on there.
But while
It's
Brett's
going
looking that up, oh, go ahead.
P. Oh, I have to look it up. I don't have it on my phone right now.
But I mean, if you guys like the show, I'm glad you did. If you have any local legends or local disappearances or anything that you'd like me to cover, or if you want to be a guest on the episode, just hit us up, let me know. And I can't wait to do more of these, brother. I appreciate the opportunity.
No problem, man. I'm excited. I know it's something that you love. I know this is like pretty much part of who you are. And so I was like, you know what? Let's get you your own show, get you on there, and we'll just talk about it. Because I'm interested in this shit too. This is some cool stuff, and obviously being a hunter, so it's something you should know about. I do know for the regular season, January through September, Mysteries in the Timbers are going to be on the fourth Sunday of every month. October through December, it's going to be like every other Tuesday. I think his next show is going to be the week after Veterans Day, I think, but don't quote me.
That works. And there's many stories to be told. I'm going to really try to focus on the stories that haven't been. Like we have Stephen Kubecki in my first episode. That's kind of a hometown legend. I wanted to cover that, cover the Michigan Triangle and all the related things. And I really want to get the stories out there of things that have happened that aren't covered in all the same podcasts and just those unknown stories. That's what I want to get out there.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, man. And then, hey, don't forget, this is your show. I don't do any of this shit. I'm just a guest.
That's right. I did. Yeah. Brett, that's nice. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. You can follow us on Instagram. Obviously our main show, Whitetail Advantage Podcast. Check us out. We're on every Sunday, and during the hunting season. Was it October through January? Every Sunday.
October through December, every Sunday. Well, yeah, for the most part, we only do it on Sundays. Yes.
And then, check us out here on Mysteries in the Timber. And if you have any topics that you want us to cover or stories or anything, if you ever want to be a guest and talk about your spooky, whatever, paranormal events in the woods or anything, hit us up. Let us know. We'll get you on, man.
Yeah, we don't say no to anybody, really.
No, this is true. All right, brother. You have a good night. I'm going to go ahead and close out the show, brother.
All right, brother.
You've been listening to Mysteries in the Timber, presented by Whitetail Advantage. If you've enjoyed tonight's journey into the unknown, be sure to follow the show, leave a review, and share it with a friend who loves the unexplained. Until next time, keep your lantern close and never stop searching the shadows.